Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, it will come as no surprise that Hospital Services Limited has witnessed an increase in demand for its telehealth services since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Sam McMaster, the Director of Hospital Services Limited Telehealth Division, joins us now to discuss this technology and its recent partnership with Zoom. Sam, this is absolutely a game-changing development for your company, but I'd like to start by getting an insight into your own background.
Hello there, Carl. Thanks for having us. Oh, my background, I've just turned 60, so I've been around the block a couple of times. I actually, after school, did a year's community service as a volunteer, not knowing what to do with my life. Went to university to do physics because it was my favourite subject, but still lacking direction. Luckily fell into a British telecommunications company called Clinicians. They were also big employers in Dublin and Cork when they existed. This was in the early 80s. And I was fortunate enough to be part of a team that developed one of the very first video conference systems in 1985. And I left the business and set up my own consultancy business with three lads that worked for me, working out of the University of Nottingham and consulting on the application of video for, at that time, it was very much large corporates and governments only, because they truthfully were the only people who could afford it.
Now, the telehealth division is a relatively new addition to the HSL business, but what is its primary aim and how does the system work?
Well, telehealth is a very broad spectrum of capabilities. It goes from, I guess, a phone call is a form of telehealth, and lots of the health service engages with patients using telephony. It goes from that at one end to instances of medical equipment connected by a network back into main hospitals from, for example, walk-in centres or community locations. And some of the ideas that we have include putting health in a bus to take it to the rural communities in Ireland so that they can have better access to health. The part that we major on is the communications, what enables medical devices remotely to work with clinicians back in hospitals, and the people side of it. How do we get people in the right connections at the right time in a secure and private manner?
Now, talk to us about some of the recent projects which telehealth has been involved in and the associated results and outcomes from these projects.
I'll give you a couple of examples. We've worked with the Belfast Trust, to Belfast Health and Social Care Trust, to implement a telestroke service. And what that means is that if a patient is brought in suspected of having a stroke, it's imperative that they get in front of a consultant who can diagnose the nature of it and therefore the treatment that gets provided to the patient. We've done this in a way that the consultant no longer has to be in the same location as the stroke patient. And if you think of all of the district hospitals that a patient might present at, it means that the consultant can be available in a quicker time to diagnose the patient and to get them into their care program. And when you consider that in a stroke, a patient is losing something like 2 million brain cells per second, time is of the essence. And what we've done in Belfast is made that as quick as it can be, with the consultants using their consumer devices like their tablets, their phones, their PCs, to actually get face-to-face with a patient and to be able to conduct that telestroke diagnosis. And it's been a phenomenal success.
More generally, how has telehealth been received by both clinicians and patients?
Well, clinicians have been hankering for telehealth services for many, many years. They have pioneered some niche applications. For example, pediatric cardiology, again, run out of Belfast and in conjunction with Our Ladies in Dublin, offers a service that connects the patients and their families from the home back into the clinic so that they can have continuous care. Now, if I tell you that one started in 2005, telehealth as a concept has been around for a long time, and clinicians, we find that many of them are extremely innovative and are looking for new and more effective ways of working. From the patient perspective, if you take the example of the pediatric cardiology, having that facility in a home for a child who is very, very ill, it turns out to be very comforting for the family. And once they understand what the Telelink actually provides to them, they become attached to it. They become very happy to have it provided for them. On a more general basis, a lot of people have felt that they've been unable to access healthcare the way that they need as a result of the pandemic. Video has become accepted as a more viable medium for accessing service, and in many different patient groups it allows care to continue, whereas the pandemic has actually kept people away from the hospital and care has been delayed.
And Sam, a lot of the examples you gave us this morning relate to the North and, of course, the NHS. But how have your dealings with the HSE evolved over the past 12 months?
As soon as we started telehealth as part of HSL's business, we reached out to the innovation folk in HSE Innovation, and we started an awareness program around the work that we had done and the capabilities in the industry. And we had started to discuss options for creating national infrastructure that would enable all hospitals to access a telehealth platform. However, we weren't far enough down that road by the time the pandemic had arrived, and it's actually caused us to stall a little bit. HSL is a supplier to every hospital on the island, and we have good working relationships across various clinical disciplines with IT and with administrators, and importantly with innovators and transformation as people. So we have a lot of activity within HSE, and we are hoping to reinstate the national infrastructure program that we'd created with the innovation team, and we are looking to equip, hopefully with the approval of HSE Innovation, the 3 innovation hubs with telehealth capabilities so that we can raise the awareness for clinicians and push video out to more and more clinical groups. We do have some customers, I nearly call them, clinical users in HSE. For example, Our Ladies in Dublin, the Hospital for Sick Children in Dublin, is equipped with a telehealth capability, and they support lots and lots of patients using it, but more as a hospital-to-hospital communication tool instead of hospital-to-patient home communications tool.
And Sam, it was recently announced that your telehealth division has partnered with Zoom. How did this partnership come about?
Oh, it's a fantastic opportunity for HSL. The reason it came about was partly to do with a lot of the bad press that Zoom got last year when people were Zoom bombing, and the holes that existed in the service at the time were being exploited by people as a nuisance to others. Zoom appointed a head of global health as an executive VP in the business, and it's a chap that I've worked with for over 25 years, a chap called Ron Emerson. Ron immediately approached HSL because we'd worked together in different ways over the years, and in HSL he worked with one of our telehealth device providers, a company called AMD Telemedicine. And Ron asked us, would we partner with Zoom on the basis that we would help to modify it and implement it in ways that were suitable for healthcare providers in the UK and Ireland to be able to use it and reach out to the general public who are huge consumers of the Zoom app already, but to use the facility in a way that meets the privacy, the security, the governance requirements of delivering healthcare through that facility.
So ultimately, your end client will benefit from a higher degree of security, but how will the partnership work on a practical level?
Zoom have empowered us to work with our customers across Ireland, north and south, to offer specific configurations of Zoom and instances of Zoom that are health compliant. Our job is partly educational, which they have to do with us, making people aware of what Zoom is in a healthcare environment. Not all the bad news that's been in the press time after time, but actually how this will help all healthcare providers to progress along that transformational challenge from healthcare provided within walls to healthcare accessible where the patient is and where the patient needs to be cared for.
And Sam, I'm sure you're watching the emerging trends within the wider telehealth space. So in that respect, what are you most excited about?
Oh, that's a good question. What excites me most? I think I'm very excited by Zoom. I hope that came across. I love the stuff that's being done in artificial intelligence. And I'm excited by the wearable materials, the wearable devices,
of course,
that form a part of the Internet of Things. In terms of artificial intelligence, we are running, I have to describe this carefully, we're running a pilot with an Israeli company where we are able to use a smartphone to use the camera and an app running on a smartphone to gather clinical grade information from a patient. Things like temperature, respiratory rate, blood oxygen level, eventually blood pressure, and other measurements from an app on a phone backed by an artificial intelligence engine. Now, these kind of apps excite me because these are what are going to allow more and more healthcare to be done in the community.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Sam McMaster, Director of Telehealth with Hospital Services Limited, and I wish Sam and his team every success with their exciting partnership with Zoom.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
South